Hey guys, Tom Morcus here, founder of Insurgent Publishing and the author of the soon-to-be released book, Command, a step-by-step guide to collaborative product development. Today I want to take you through a technique that I use to more than quadruple industry standards for sales from webinars. Now, I say webinars, but it doesn't have to be only webinars. You can use this technique when you're trying to sell anything, and it's specifically useful when you're applying it to a premium product or service. Now, this technique I call the coffee is for closers technique. Now, a little background on the name, if you're not familiar, and you definitely have to check out this movie. It's a quote from a movie called Glengarry Glen Ross, and Alec Baldwin actually is the one that says it. In the beginning of the movie, it's about these salesmen who are really bad at sales, and they have not closed anything recently. So the regional manager sends in their best salesman to give a motivational speech to these guys to get them ready to close some sales. And that's one of the lines he drops when one of the poor salesmen goes up to go get coffee, and he says, "Put that coffee down. Coffee is for closers." And then he goes on to say his technique, which is always be closing, ABC. Now, there's a lot of ridiculousness about that speech, but I find it kind of funny. First and foremost, that's why I wanted to call this technique coffee is for closers technique. But the second reason I call that is because of the emphasis that's put on calls and person-to-person sales in that movie. Now that's in the context, I think, of like real estate or financial sales or something like that. In our context, it's online sales, right? It's online marketing. You're coming here, you're probably interested in building some kind of business online. That's who I mostly teach, and those are most of my clients. So how can we use this old school sales technique online? Well, it's simple. It's, again, what I call the coffees for closers sales technique. And the way to do it is to actually get on the phone with a potential prospect, with a potential customer. So when we did this, when we applied it to webinar, we funneled, in the last video, by the way, I explained the lean sales funnel, which will be linked below, and how I created the lean sales funnel, which led our prospective customers to a webinar where they signed up, and then we did a live webinar where we sold our product. Or in our case, it was a premium service. We were selling a $3,000 premium service. But I know of guys that have sold $10,000 services, $10,000 products, and more using webinars. So it's possible to sell very high-end stuff using live webinars. It's actually incredible. And so we were doing that though for $3,000 is still premium. It's expensive. People, you're taking your credit card for a $3,000 charge. That's something special, right? Well, the reality is we did the webinar the first time, and we got one person to buy out of 30 or 40. That's about industry standard, maybe a little less. But then what we did was the second time we emphasized, let's get phone numbers. So during the webinar, we asked people to put in their phone numbers if they wanted to do some kind of like one-on-one conversation to kind of give them guidance and direction. So the purpose of our webinar was to teach these people how to start businesses from scratch. And so then we said, hey, put in your phone number here if you'd like to talk more about this and talk more about this service, product and service that we're offering. Because we were totally transparent about that we're going to sell them product or service at the end of this. So they're already aware of that. We asked for their phone number to talk. I get on the phone call with them, and I'm talking about their problems and trying to help them fix it. Well, here's what's really cool about this is I could just leave it at that and say get on the phone call and then close the sale. But how do you actually do that? It's actually a little bit harder than you might imagine. Well, one of the guys I listened to is Noah Kagan of AppSumo, who does this really cool like 4-minute video on YouTube. And he talks about the way to like close any sale, and it was really effective. I used the same thing, and I've continued to refine it. And one of the things he does is he starts by having the person tell them about the customer tell him about their problem, right? So he says, so tell me about your problem. Tell me about what your issue is. And so this potential customer, this person will tell you their problems in this particular area. So for us, it was business. And then the key there, so you get them talking. Then you ask them questions like, where would you like to be? So if you're struggling in all these areas, where would you like to be? So you give them a vision of the future. They'll explain that. So then you ask, what have you tried? And they'll tell you some things that they've tried. Because if they have a problem, they've obviously tried solutions. And then you ask, why didn't that solution work that you tried? Now they're going to give you a list of reasons. And like Noah says, these reasons don't really matter. It doesn't really matter what they are. There's going to be all sorts of reasons. But after that, you can then transition into the actual sale. So if you know why it didn't work, you can then say, well, here's a product or service that could work for you, or that will work for you. It'll actually solve that problem. And it'll do all the things that this other product or service wasn't able to do, or these other things that you've tried weren't able to do. Now the key here, and this is important, you have to actually be able to fulfill that promise. You shouldn't be selling anything if you can't actually fulfill that promise in the first place. But I'm going in with the assumption here that what you're creating is actually useful, and so that people will want it, and that's actually like a legitimate product. And that's all I sell, that's all I'm ever a part of, is legitimate products and services. So we know we can actually deliver on our promises. But I have to get the person talking about their problems, find out what their pain points are, find out what they want, find out why it's not working, what they've tried before. And then I can now transition into the sale. So what Noah says is listen, relate, transition. And so that's what I just took you through. So step 1, get them to identify what the problem is. Step 2, ask them where would you like to be, get them into the future. Step 3, ask them what they've tried. Step 4, ask them why that hasn't worked. And then step 6, transition, and explain to them how you have something, if this is true, how you have something that can solve this problem in this way, where these other products and services that you've tried, or these other solutions that you've tried, have not worked. And by doing that, on that second webinar, we ended up converting at a 13% conversion rate for that webinar, which industry standard is about 2 or 3%. Just by getting on the phone call and going through this process of getting to know these people, getting to know these potential customers of ours over the phone. So there you go. So I hope that was useful. I hope you actually got something out of this. Check out the notes right below the video, and there's going to be some additional links to bonus material. So click on those if you're interested in finding out more. I also have some templates and some spreadsheets of these questions that you can copy and paste and have in front of you, so you can do your own coffees for closers sales technique for your next webinar, or for anything, any product that you're selling. So check it out below, copy and paste it, and also if you enjoyed this video, share. I would really appreciate that. Thanks so much, guys.